What's up, Recovered on Purpose family? Thank you so much for tuning in for this week's episode of Guest Saturdays. I'm coming in from Cartagena, Colombia right now. So that's why I'm not in the studio, but I'm super excited about the guest that we have today. Eric Rogers is going to be bringing in a message of mindset and peak performance. Super excited to introduce him to you guys and for you to hear his story. Enjoy the show. Keep living Recovered on Purpose.
The black represents the darkness from which we came. The white represents the light in which we now live. And the red represents the passion it takes to live Recovered on Purpose.
All right, everyone. Welcome. Super excited that you're here and super excited to introduce you to my guest. Eric Rogers is a born leader, influencer, and entrepreneur. He founded Rogers Fitness Academy at the age of 27 and established and growing mindset fitness and nutrition coaching service. Bodybuilding is one of his passions, but there is so much more to him than fitness. He is a husband, father, and God-fearing man, and he takes his freedom seriously. He has overcome massive adversities in his life and has built a life from the absolute bottom: homelessness, incarceration, extreme addiction, abuse, trauma, and suicide attempts. Eric is a survivor, and now he lives to tell his story and mentor others. He has been featured on multiple high-profile podcasts and becoming well-known in the self-development and mental health realms. His goal is to spread a powerful message. You are what you strive to be if you put in the work. There is nobody more influential in your life except for yourself. Your attitude and mentality determine your character. Your character determines your success. The warrior mentality is one that cannot be broken, and discipline is the only thing keeping you from reaching your full potential. His main focus is growth, and he shows the world how effective his methods are by practicing what he preaches. He lives to serve his community and spreads a valuable message to the world. Guys, super excited to introduce you to Eric Rogers. What's up, brother? Thanks for coming in, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. What's good,
Absolutely.
brother? I love the intro. Love the intro.
Thank you, man. Thank you, bro.
Of course.
My producer that I've been working with since he started working with me in my addiction, we made some poetry videos and stuff. He created that intro with the music and everything. And dude, every time I hear that, I'm just like, I get pumped up. I could swallow a dumbbell or something.
I love that.
Let's go.
Cool, man.
Bro, you said some things in your and just let everybody know that's watching. We didn't script this. We haven't really talked about what we're going to go into, but some things in your bio and in what I just read are really in sync with what we do here at Recovered on Purpose, because the whole mission of this is us addicts in recovery lifting up and sharing our stories powerfully with the world so addicts suffering know that there's a way out. So tell us a little bit about, because you say that in your bio, tell us a little bit about why you believe that too.
Man, well, first of all, I could say very strongly that sharing my story saved my life, right? And so it helps others for sure. But I don't think it's ever too early to share your story, because I think it's the highest point of accountability when you're being vulnerable with the world, with some suffering or darkness that you've been through, because it allows you to step in front of those demons and put them in the light. And it makes it a lot harder to fall back, right? Influencing people, leading people into a better place by telling your story, it puts you in this high threshold of wanting to continue to do better. That makes sense.
100%. Yeah, I experienced that during COVID, because during COVID I had 2.5 years, just over 2.5 years when it all hit. And there was this point I remember because I was confined in my apartment. I was all alone. I wasn't able to go to my meetings. I wasn't able to commune with my people. And I started getting that suffering inside of me, that restless, irritable discontent, that depression type state. And I even had stupid thoughts that I've never had in my recovery before that point. And I remember at a point when I was at my lowest mentality in that moment, I actually got down on my knees and just meditated about the people that needed to hear about my recovery, the people that needed me to stay sober. I didn't stay sober and I didn't stay well at that point just for myself. Have you recognized that while you're sharing your story and things, have you had like experiences with people that it's helped, people reaching out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been sharing my story for about 3 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started, I sucked. I was very bad at it. I couldn't speak in front of a camera. And actually, I even put out a poll on Instagram the first week of just doing some stories, right, on my Instagram story. And I said, should I keep doing this or should I stop? And I had 20 people vote. 19 of them said you should stop. The only person that said to keep going was my wife. And it hurt me at first, but I was like, you know what? That's not why I'm doing it. So originally me telling my story was more of a therapy to release a lot of the darkness in me and the things that hold me back, and just to express it made me feel way better. I've spent my life lying to myself, and to finally be honest and to just do it in an extreme way, right? Telling the world my story, it released it. It was selfish. I wanted to do it for me first. And then over time, you know, now 3 years later, I have people reaching out to me saying that my story has changed their life.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I'm talking hundreds of people have said that to me, that without coaching them, without even talking to them just hearing me over and over and over again, being consistent in my story, my message, and my actions, they've followed those footsteps.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely changed their life. So yeah, it feels good to see that, you know, all the pain that you went through was worth it.
Yeah.
If it helps one person, right?
Amen. Amen. I love that, bro. And so you did this poll on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
And this is
big mistake.
I mean, or not, because I can tell you, before I wrote my book, before I actually put it out and everything, and I was talking to family members and people that were close to me and stuff, I had people that were really close to me that told me not to do it, that told me not to share these stories, not to put them out to the world, because it might harm your reputation. It might harm your ability to go out into the world, because if you put out that you were a junkie, you know, then everybody's going to know that about you, right? And what that did, I don't remember ever like wanting to prove them wrong or anything like that, but I feel like it empowered me to make the decision no matter what anybody said. And then when that book came out, bro, and I started getting those messages and I started getting emails and people telling me what my story was doing for them, man, I didn't care what anybody said anymore. And it's almost like at the beginning, and this goes to anybody out there that hasn't started publicly sharing your recovery story yet. It's almost like in the beginning, you have this opposition. And if we look at it spiritually, there's an enemy trying to stop you from saving the people that you're meant to save with your story. And when we get over that hump, right, and we push through that adversity, we break through that mountain, you know, there's so much freedom for so many other people on the other side of that. Right. So we're talking a lot about sharing a story. So why don't you tell us where you're from? Tell us your story and how you got to this point.
Yeah, man, I'm from a very small town in California called Pilot Hill. It's like population 419 people to be exact. And, you know, I grew up from the outside looking in, a great family. If you ask my brother and sister how their childhood was, they'd say it was the best thing they've ever been through. Now, my perspective was altered for a reason that they would never understand. And they actually didn't know until earlier this year, right? Earlier this year, I got an opportunity to be on some of the biggest podcasts in the world, you know, top 30 podcasts in the world. And it was the first time I shared that at 7 years old, I was sexually molested by my Sunday school teacher. And, you know, something that didn't happen to them, but it changed my perspective. And it's crazy how that can happen, right? Same family, same home, same lifestyle. But for me, it was pain. It was horrible. To them, it was great. And it was that one experience that changed everything. So, you know, you can imagine what that would do to a child, right? The cool thing is I tried to handle it on my own. It never happened again. I actually I poured bleach in her coffee the next week because I knew I had to go back. I knew I had to go back every single week. And I don't know what put that in me, what told me. I remember my mom saying just a cap full of bleach, right? And I can laugh about it now. But I took that in a note, to poison her, and she got super sick. And that scared me. She didn't die, but she got very sick. And that scared me. And so I never shared that story as a child. Never told anyone because I was afraid that I'd get in trouble for what I did. Right now, I felt like the bad person. And so I held that in, and I held it in up until the age of 27 years old. And it really caused a lot of damage. It was a repressed memory for most of my life. But, at the age of 8, I started finding ways to mask that pain, to make that pain a little bit lighter. And I did it using my mother's prescription drugs. So at 8 years old, I was finding ways to take painkillers and stuff like that. And when I couldn't find that, I was drinking a bottle of Robitussin or 2, taking 4 or 5, 6 Benadryl pills, whatever I could do. It was the only thing that stopped me from overthinking or being stuck in my head or feeling like I wasn't good enough.
Yeah, and I want to pause you really quick because there's a lot of listeners. They say in America about 1/3 of females experience sexual trauma as a child. In our community, in the recovery community, that skyrockets. And there's also a lot of men in recovery that have experienced something like that. And what you're saying that you started to have thoughts that you wanted to get out of. You started having identity issues that you wanted to get out of by starting to use drugs. What were those specific thoughts, identities, what you were trying to escape from your mind about that time and that event?
Well, a lot of it was because of what happened. It put me in a place where my behavior changed, and I started becoming a bad listener. One thing, it's hard to remember everything, right?
Yeah.
Such a long time ago. One thing I remember is that I could no longer trust authority. That was pretty much my biggest struggle, was to listen to my father, was to listen to my mother, was to listen to anybody that was in a position of telling me what to do. I would not do it. I didn't trust anybody, no matter what. And at a young age, my dad was a Folsom prison guard for 30 plus years. And he saw that behavior, and he, as a disciplinarian father, he took, he used discipline to correct that. And so a lot of it was like my behavior created discipline. And I'm not talking about a spanking. I'm talking about abuse, both emotional and physical abuse, and points to where I was scared. And I didn't believe it was my fault. It was not fair, but I couldn't tell them why I was acting this way. And so it caused this huge commotion in my house where I was literally like this child, like this, like the ugly duckling, right? The black sheep. I was treated differently. They thought I was just a troubled child, and really they didn't know what was going on. And so a lot of the pain I was running away from was how I was being treated at home. Right.
Do you think, and this is just a question that's coming up in case there's parents out there listening that have a kid that's starting to act up out of the norm or something. Do you think that there could be a conversation to be had with a kid that age? Maybe the right kind of question to ask to try to bring up a conversation where they feel safe to bring out something that happened, if something happened?
I think there's some preliminary actions that should be taken with each child because of the way this country and society is, right? So before something bad happens, you should have a relationship with your child that's good enough to where they're able to open up and they don't feel afraid to tell you things that are very scary to them, right? That's been hard for me as a father because I was raised by a disciplinarian, somebody that would literally abuse me for the smallest things. And so becoming a father, a lot of those things want to come out, and I have to stop myself. I have to make sure that my son is safe with me, that he's not afraid of me. First of all, he's got to feel safe with you. He's got to be able to communicate with you. And then you got to be able to tell him, like, prepare him for something like that. Obviously, speaking words to a 7-year-old about sexual abuse might not work, but there's ways to do it. So open communication with your child and knowing who he's around. It's hard to say, but it's hard to trust everybody, right?
Right.
If your son or daughter you're experiencing them having a massive behavioral change, just know that something is probably going on that you don't understand. Sadly enough.
Yeah. And I think that it's worthy of investigation, right? Because this is in a chapter in my book, and this is actually one of the things I was told not to write about. I had a plan. I had a legitimate plan in 2016. I saved up money for it and went out to go sell DirecTV for a while, saving up money because I was planning on being a child molester serial killer. I just thought that was my life's call at the time. I was high out of my mind, but I just believed I had to go do this. I just believed it was my call, right? Because at that time I was hearing I heard so many stories about this, and it just infuriated me. And I had this moment where I was just so in this place of anger and just wanting to go get these people. And I just clearly heard the voice of God tell me that revenge is his. And I'm not here to get revenge and cause harm on someone else, but to be here for the victims, to be here for them and love on them, give them a space to talk, give them a space to, grow and heal through this. Right.
Right. And
man, it's the amount of people that have dealt with this, right, and that are still silent about it. It blows my mind that there's people out there still suffering with this that feel like they can't talk about it. So I appreciate you talking about it and showing the listeners that it's it's powerful to talk about. So you go from this experience, and this is kind of what starts driving you into Robitussin and prescription pills and things like that at a really early age, 8, 9 years old. Where does that lead you?
Oh, it led me to, I went on and off of being like a troubled child to finding God and being very good and getting off the drugs. So I went from if you look at my school pictures, I'm a prep, and then I'm a scene kid and a prep, you know what I mean? And so it wasn't always bad. When I found God, it seemed to pull me out of these moods and these struggles. And that's probably why I am who I am today. But eventually it just came to the point where I was getting in fights. I was getting into harder drugs, right? Age of 16, I started doing cocaine. I got expelled from my school. I almost put a kid in the hospital. I was a very violent child. My dad was violent. It was what I grew up in. It's all I knew. And all I wanted to do was prove to myself that I can be like my dad, or I can stand up for myself. And, turned me into a bully, in a lot of ways. I was a bully. I got to the point where I was doing, cocaine. I was selling cocaine. And then my dad found that on me, and he just said, "You got 24 hours to get the fuck out of my house. And if I ever see you again, I'm taking you to jail myself." No help. No one offered me help.
And how old were you?
Again, I was 16.
Wow.
Yeah. And so 16, they sent me down south. They sent me to another family's house to live. And they tried living with them and getting better. I ruined that. I got kicked out of there. And then I came back, and it was 17 when I got caught with the cocaine and kicked out of the house. Sorry about that. And so I was 17. I just graduated high school. So I did graduate, and that's why they were like, "You're done. I'm out. You're out. Bye." And then I was living in my car. And then that night, actually the night that I got kicked out, I called my brother, and I was like, "Hey man, where you at? You have a place to stay?" And he's like, "Yeah, come to my friend's house." And I went over there, and I was I slept there. We woke up in the morning, and then my brother was in the shower, and I was talking to this kid. I was telling him, I gotta quit. I'm trying to get better. I just got kicked out. I want to get my life together. This is scary, right? And he just pulls out a bag of white powder, and he's just like, "You want a bump?" And I was just like, "Yeah, sure." Just great friend.
Yeah.
And I took a bump, and then he just immediately asked me, "How long you been doing methamphetamines?" And I was like shocked. I was like, what are you talking about? I know it burned a little bit, but I just thought it was bad coke. And that moment I was like, holy shit. Like I just did the worst drug in the world in my mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've never touched the stuff. And I was just like, oh my God. And it's like, now I'm homeless. Now I'm doing meth, right? And I was pissed at the guy, and I drove off. And then later that night I came over and I started smoking it with him. And I'm this type of person that I'm an extremist. Absolutely. If I'm in, I'm all in. And so, you know,
me too. A lot of us.
Right. Right. A couple weeks later, I'm at this point where I'm ingesting more methamphetamines than some of these 20-year veteran methods.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm starting to see signs of schizophrenia months later. I'm starting to get drug-induced psychosis. I'm seeing things. I'm not sleeping or eating for 3 weeks at a time. I am going insane. And it was actually something that I was kind of striving for at that time. I embraced it. I was like, no one wanted me, right? Everyone I talked to betrayed me in some way. I was just in this victim mindset that, you know what, this is my life. And I took that as far as I could push it. And it started putting me in positions where, hey, I needed more. And so I started getting involved in, you know, the Aryan Brotherhood, and I started selling for them. I started selling cocaine for the Crips. I was just like this guy. I'd get my hands on as much drugs as I could, take as much as I could, and make as much money as I could. And I would just keep this going. But I was staying homeless. I was staying broken, and nothing good was coming out of it. And it came to a point where, you know, about a year later, being homeless, no job, I found myself in jail, right? I had some cops pull behind me, and I had a bunch of drugs on me, and they took me. I just turned 18.
Good timing.
Took me to jail. Right, bro. It was like a couple weeks after I turned 18, and then I'm in jail. I'm about 135 pounds, sucked up. I was just.
What are you now? Like 230?
240 pounds.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, and I was scared shitless. But you know what? It was crazy because it was like the first time in my life for a long time that I've been sober. That a few weeks in jail, like I had to sober up. And one thing I learned in there is I started doing push-ups. I started doing pull-ups, and I realized that helped me. And I figured it was actually not that bad. I realized it was not that bad to be sober. And when I got out, I didn't stop. I continued to do methamphetamines, but I got some help from my cousin. He moved me in with him, and he gave me love, unexpected love. He was like the one person that kind of said, hey, you're struggling, come live with me. And he helped me go to court. I ended up winning my trial. And from there, he's just like, look, bro, you look like shit. And no one's ever told me that, right? I made sure I was isolated from as many people as possible at that point. Yeah. And he's like, you look like shit, and you need to go get a job, and you need to get your life together. And so he's like, go move up to Tahoe. Like, nobody's doing meth up there, and it's summertime, and you could probably find a place to sleep. And I packed my shit. I had about $40. I put $40 of gas in my car. I had a box of canned foods, a bunch of chili, my guitar, a tarp, and a blanket. And I drove up to Truckee, California. I found a dirt road. I went about 10 miles down that dirt road, found a creek, and I set camp, and I lived there for 4 months. And I saw my brother a few times, but besides that, I was isolated from everyone. And that's where I detoxed. I lived off the land for like 4 months, and it was quite a cool experience. It healed me. I can say that nature is part of healing me. Yeah. And when I got to the point where I wasn't craving anymore, I was detoxed. I found a job in Truckee, and then I met my wife. And then round 2 fucking happened, right? So, I mean, we could go through that too, but it wasn't done, because one thing I know now is that it's not the drugs that you have to worry about. There's something else causing this pain. There's something you're running from. It's not that you just love drugs and you like feeling good. Some people maybe, but most of the time you're running from something. And until you solve that issue, it's going to keep manifesting itself into something new and something new until you you know, I say life teaches you until you learn your fucking lesson. Right. So, you know, I don't know if you want to talk. My story's long.
No, I love it. I love it. So while you're living down there on the land, and you told me a little bit earlier in your story that you met God early on, right?
Yeah.
So how is that possible to know God yet still make mistakes? How is that possible?
Oh man, you always make mistakes. You're never going to be perfect, right? Yeah. I found God because my parents were Christian, and well, surprisingly, 7, I said I got blessed by my Sunday school teacher. Yeah, I never blamed God, which is weird.
And a lot of people do. A lot of people do.
It's honestly crazy how I didn't. Yeah, it's crazy how I never connected God to the evil that happened to me that day. Yeah, because something in my heart, I believe I was chosen by God, and because of that, I believe that I wouldn't blame that evil on God. It was something way worse that day that happened. But one thing that I do know is that whatever that woman was happening in that woman's heart, she passed it on to me. I don't know, like sexual sin is a demon in my understanding.
Jezebel, bro.
Yeah, and she passed that to me because I never dealt with like the child stuff, but I've had like a lustful heart my whole life. Yeah. And it's one of my biggest struggles, bro. Honesty and loyalty has been a struggle for me, even in my marriage. And, you know, that's something I don't really talk about much, but that stuff it's powerful. Yeah. And, you know, I'm still on my journey to healing and recovering from my past. Yeah. And I forever will be.
Amen. And the reason I asked that, I gave my life to Jesus when I was 10 years old. And 2 years later is when I found cocaine at 12 years old. So anybody out there that, you know, and that's great that you say, you know, you didn't blame it on God, because that's such a conversation with people that have been wounded by the church, because you have church wounds. Like that is a church wound. And what is beautiful about what you're saying is that you didn't let that separate you from faith, right? Because you were able to separate human evil, we're just going to leave that at evil, to God. Because a personal relationship with God is something that everybody in recovery needs to find. And especially addicts that are out there suffering, it's like the number one solution to being able to find recovery and find freedom from addiction is a relationship with God. Yes. So you go out there and you're living on the land. Are you building that relationship, or what are you doing while you're out there basically isolated and detoxing?
Man, I made my camp like amazing. First of all, I basically use that tweaker mentality. I built a really cool camp, man. I made it. I had
like home. 3 cords that go in and make a radio of FM and everything. Doing a podcast with like an antenna.
For real, bro. No, it was cool. I had like pulley systems in the tree for my food, and I found a bunch of stuff. I built shelters in different places just in case there was fires. It was cool. And but out there, you know, I really found God by just being alone. Yeah. And I believe that there's points in every man's life where he needs to be alone and understand who he is.
Amen.
And I think that saved me and healed me, because, you know, for a long time it was always everyone else's fault, right? You know, but God kind of showed me, and he showed me this every time I've changed my life, even if I fell after that, I put myself here and it wasn't anybody else's fault. And I'm a very intense person, and I've always had identity issues with who I should be. I've always been told like, hey, you need to calm down, you need to slow down, you know, and it's something that I cannot do. Yeah. And I've recently accepted that fully. And I think that's another cool thing about telling my story, is that people understand who I am now, why I am who I am, instead of guessing like, bro, you need to calm down. It's like, no, you hear my story, dude. You might understand why I'm this way, and I'm not going to change it because it's my biggest attribute now. Right? Amen. Yeah. So out there, a lot of reading the Bible, a lot of writing, I had my guitar out there. I always saved my guitar strings as a kid. And so I don't know why, but it was perfect because I used those as snares. I learned how to make a snare when I was a kid in science camp, catching squirrels.
Oh,
it's
cool.
like a little trap, right? So a squirrel goes through it and it closes it like a noose. And it hangs them basically.
Oh, wow.
And so I ate squirrels. I ate whatever I could out there, and I survived for 4 months.
Wow.
Life-changing event.
Amen.
Yeah. And then meeting my wife after that, after I got sober, and I dated her, that we fell in love and we got married, had a kid. And I brought all my toxicity into that marriage, all of it. And I made her life hell for a long time. It turned into alcoholism. And I took, I just chased the next drug. And I fell back into that darkness where it was everyone else's fault. And it came to a point where it got very bad. I did a lot of bad things in that marriage. And 4 years ago, 4.5, 5 years ago, she just told me after we had the kid, she's like, "You're not fit to be a father or a husband, and I'm leaving you." And so she picked up everything. She took my kid and she moved states. We were living in Reno at the time. She came back here to California. And 4 months after that of heavy drinking and back to drug use and just being a victim, I decided I was going to kill myself. And I sat on my bed and I didn't tell anybody. That's when I realized it was real, because I wasn't crying out for help.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, "Hey, look at me, help me." It was, I made a decision that I was going to kill myself. So I took my Glock and I put it in my mouth, and I was sobbing, crying, I was spit everywhere. I was ready. I started to pull that trigger, and something happened to me at that moment. And it was God. And it was this glimpse of hope. It was a trip, because it was like almost a flashback. And I have PTSD. So like I get those sometimes, but this was like a flashback. It's like a flash forward of hope. And it was like me and my son and my wife healthy. And I realized at that moment that actually I do have a chance of being that man. Like, I may have ruined it, but I've redeemed myself many times. I can do it again. And so what I did at that moment is I decided that moment that, I put myself here through my past actions. I brought myself here again, rock bottom. I've lost everything, and it's my fault. And my habits, if I can change them now, then my future, I'll be in control of my future. It can be different. So I gave myself a year. And I said, if I can't make my life worth living, which is me being that, it was a vision of me being a good father and husband, then I would take my own life. And so I hustled, bro. It ignited something in me. And I, being the extremist I am, I went the opposite direction. I cut everything out. And I started to pick up good habits instead. And so the program that I have as a coach right now is built off the exact steps I took from that moment to who I am today.
Amen. And we're going to take a quick 30-second break. And then on the other side of this, we're going to be talking about what those habits are, what that program is, and how you can implement all of this into your own life. We'll be right back. What's up, family? I hope you're enjoying this episode as much as I do when I'm making them. And guys, if you are getting value from this, if you've heard any golden nuggets that you think other people should hear, make sure that you're sharing it with your groups or your pages so other people that are looking for a message of hope are able to find it. Also, in case you weren't here for the beginning of the show, if you have a recovery story and you want to learn how to add impact and income through sharing it, follow the link in the pinned comment to book your one-time, 100% free call with me, where we're going to strategize exactly how you can share your story and do just that. Enjoy the rest of the show. Keep living Recovered on Purpose. Awesome, bro. So a lot of people in recovery have done programs, or they've done treatment or 12 steps, things like that. And something that inspired me about your story and what I want to share with people out there, the audience that are listening, is that you kind of did this on your own path, right? You found your own path with, changing the mindset, the victim mindset, and giving yourself a year. So what did you change in that first year that made the most impact on you? What was going on in that year?
Man, my habits. Simple. Yeah. My habits. And it couldn't just be like, "Hey, I'm done, I quit," and then sit there in a room and just try to be okay. No. I went to the extreme in the opposite direction. And that's how I teach people, like any negative emotion that we have, there's a positive action to reverse it, right? You're always taking action against something. That's what I'm all about, is taking action, doing the work. And so instead of giving myself time to think about drugs and alcohol or being depressed or whatever, what I do is I'd spend countless hours in the gym. And what happened was, this is great, is I hadn't been eating in years, bro. Since I was a little kid, I had no appetite. I was always on something. And so when I started getting into the gym and I started getting hungry again because I wasn't drinking or doing drugs, I started building muscle and my physique changed. And I was like, this is great, right? And so I was kind of blessed with that, genetically. And then what happened is I was like, I want to take this to the next level. I started becoming addicted to fitness. And so I learned about nutrition, and I incorporated nutrition into my life. And I used, the stomach is amazing. I don't know if you know this, but if you can control what you ingest, you can control everything that you can control. Right?
It's like a second mind down there. It has another mind in the gut. Yep. Exactly.
So like if you see someone that's shredded and ripped, like you give them a handshake because it's mad respect. It's hard to do.
Yeah.
He's got control over his brain, and that's why he was able to do that. And so what I did is I used my stomach as a piece of accountability, because I realized that every time I didn't have an appetite, I was either on something, or I was stressed, or I was anxious, or I was depressed. And so I realized that if I had an appetite, then I was doing good. And so I really focused on appetite, digestion. I started eating 7 to 8 meals a day, smaller meals, and I worked my way up. And what happened is, obviously my physique changed enormously. But I also started to have more control emotionally and physically. And surprisingly not, because I took that extremist road, I went from drugs, alcohol, no appetite, no eating, and just being a dirtbag, to being someone that's extremely disciplined in fitness and nutrition. I started looking around. I'm like, wow, I'm more disciplined than a lot of people, right? A couple other steps I took is I started going to church. I joined a men's group. The reason why I did that is because I wanted to get around people that were normal, that didn't struggle like I did as a kid. Yeah. And I wanted to just see how they act. So I want to see how they react to certain things. I wanted to ask them questions. And I quickly realized that I didn't want to be like anyone else. It kind of sickened me, to be honest. Everyone was so lovey-dovey and everything was so great. And I'm here like, I have these dark thoughts, or these like extremely great thoughts. And I was like, you know what? Like, I don't want to be normal, but I want to be good. And so I just kind of, I took my intensity and I took it to the next level. I put it towards my fitness and nutrition. I put it towards my job as an electrician. And I just started accelerating in life, right? Other things that I did is I changed the way I woke up. And this was huge. Yeah. A lot of us, we wake up for the things that stress us out the most. Money, kids, I'm late for work, right? So what I started doing is I started waking up at 2:50 every single morning. And I did that 7 days a week for a long time. Yeah. And the reason why is because I was waking up for me now, right? And I had this whole list of habits that I checked off every day before I started my day. I put time towards myself, towards God, prepping my food. And then when I walked into my work day or into the world, my mind was prepared for any test and trial. Drugs came my way, I was able to say no. But if I woke up late and I snoozed, someone brings the drugs or alcohol in front of me, I'll take it, right? Yep. So I started seeing that I was more in control of my daily outcome if I woke up a certain way, if I had these list of habits, if I had control over the things I ingest, if I hit the gym and got all the stress and anger out. Yeah. And 6 months later, I called my wife and I said, hey, look, this is what I'm doing. This is what I've done. And she didn't know. And she wanted me back. Amazing.
Amen. Right? Yeah. Amen.
I moved to California. We've been married. We've been together ever since. Amen. I am that vision that I had of me being the father and the husband that I knew I wanted to be and I should be, I achieved in 6 months of hard work. And I completely turned my life around in 6 months. And I was that person I envisioned every single day. And that vision, it was a focal point for me. And it was something to be driven for. And because I thought of it every day, and my habits aligned with that vision every day, I was focused and nothing stopped me.
Yeah.
And it was all discipline, brother.
Amen.
Discipline.
So do you think that you carried a different identity into this new life, and you strive to be that identity and that vision, the identity of a father, of a godly man, of a nutrition specialist, and a bodybuilder, that kind of stuff? Did you carry that into that help you to create these habits?
Yeah, you know what? My wife says it perfectly. Eric, you have two identities. You have the flesh, and then you have like your walk with Christ, right? Like you're either this super horrible, sinful person that does bad things and is just crazy victim, or you're the strongest, most driven and dedicated godly man I've ever met. And it was great. Like when she says that, it's like, you're so right. Yeah. And I have to be disciplined. Yeah. Otherwise I'm the other Eric. So yeah, I think it was an identity that God had ready and available for me this whole time. I don't know if I would have had it if I didn't go through these struggles. Amen. But when I decided to look for it, God gave it to me. And, you know, I think it was all the struggles I went through, all the pain, all the darkness that set me up for a mindset so strong that I can endure addiction. Yeah. I can get through my trauma, my pain. And, you know, it's all been for the greater good. Now, I get to decide every day what Eric I want to be, what path I want to. And it's very easy for me to go the other way. Yeah. Very easy.
Yeah. You said two things that I want to touch on. You said, when I decided to look for it, God gave it to me. And I teach that to everyone. I talk about that to everyone. Like, we have to seek, we have to knock, we have to seek in order to find, we have to knock for it to be open to us. We have to ask to get an answer, right? And so making that decision to seek was like the first step, right? And then when you started the habits of the nutrition, because it sounded like that was the first thing you brought up. You started the habits that formed the bodybuilder you, the bodybuilder identity of you. And in Charles Duhigg's book, The Power of Habit, he talks about something called a keystone habit that will basically cause you to become something better during the day. Like, if you always do this one certain thing, you start to make better decisions with all of your decisions through the day. Did you find that your keystone habit was the nutrition and bodybuilding, or do you think that there was something else that caused you to be able to carry out the bodybuilding?
100%. It was fitness and nutrition. Yeah. And I could say that part of that fire was ignited at a young age. Mm-hmm. So I have been diagnosed with bipolar 2, and I've been state mandated anger management. I've been in a lot of violence in my life. I've created, my cat's meowing. Sorry.
Yeah, it's all good. Hey, kitty.
Can you hear it?
A little bit. Yeah.
All right, I'm a real person now. You know.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. Let me just.
Yeah, it's all good, brother. Guys, this is what, you know, there's always a cat meowing in the background of life. There's always something going on in life, right?
Symbolic.
That we just have to get up and just take care of really quick. All right.
Yeah.
We just have to make the decision to take care of it and then get back into it, guys.
Get back into it. Oh man. Okay. Where was I? I'm sorry.
I mean, you were focusing on the nutrition. You were building that as your keystone habit, and
yeah. I was shown that fitness was a part of my healing as like at 8 years old, because every time I got in a position where my dad would beat me, abuse me, or whatever, right? Yeah. I'd always go into the garage and hang on the rafters, and I'd do as many pull-ups as I could. And the reason why, it was the only thing that helped me not explode. Because I'd come into these, I would, you know, be bullied and beat and then pushed outside. And I just wanted to kill, bro. Like that. I had a need and a want for blood at a young age. And I think a lot of it was maybe poisoning that lady at 8 or 7 years old the week after and getting away with it. I think it triggered something in me that said, like, it's okay, right? It's okay to be vengeful, and it's okay to be you know, it's okay to be like this. And
Yeah.
so I always had these thoughts of like being like sneaky killer. I've never done anything like that, but these thoughts of violence, bro, like serious thoughts of violence, would enter my mind, and it would overpower me to a point where I had to do something to get them out, or I would do something about it. And so, which would probably, my dad would probably just end up beating my ass again, right? So, you know, luckily he was a big guy and I didn't get in trouble doing something really stupid. So I would do pull-ups, or I'd fill up my backpack full of rocks and I'd run up a hill as hard as I could. And I remembered that in certain points in my life when I was getting better, when I tried to get sober, that fitness, the exercising, the pushing myself to a physical limit would help me. It did help me. And so it was the first thing that came to my mind when I decided to get my life together. It was like, hey, I want to get in shape. I want to go to the gym.
Yeah. And
I fell in love with it.
Yeah. And I think for me, because I was 148 pounds when I got clean and sober also. Because I was IV, heroin, meth, and I tried crack once for like 3 months, because nobody tries crack just once. And
yeah, that's true.
And I'm 215 now, you know, and
that's awesome, bro.
What people in their, you know, in their addiction, it's really hard to envision who you could possibly be, right? And the only example that we have in our addiction are of those that have recovered, those people that have recovered, that have, you know, the life that we aspire towards. Maybe it's the freedom emotionally and spiritually, the spiritual connection. Maybe it's the fitness that they're attracted to. Maybe it's the, you know, the family life or the relationship or something like that. But us living our life to the fullest, our best life in recovery, is actually what attracts people to find recovery, more so than us going out and telling people you got to quit using drugs. Because was there any time when you were, you know, snorting or smoking meth that you didn't know you probably shouldn't be doing this?
Oh, yeah, all the time, bro.
Yeah, we know that we shouldn't be doing this. But the thing is, it's like, it's the attractive thing in our life right now. This is how we know how to live. So us in recovery, you know, when we live our best life and we're out sharing our stories and we're walking with light and we're being this powerhouse person, that's what people in addiction are like, holy cow, wait, he was homeless and a drug addict? That dude?
Yeah.
Huh, I'm homeless and a drug addict. Maybe that's possible for me, you know?
Right.
So I think it's super important. And the keystone habit that broke through for me was making my bed every single day. And in my first 30 days of recovery, what I did was I made my bed first, and then I got up and I just did 20 jumping jacks, 20 sit-ups or crunches, and then 10, 10, and 10 push-ups, because I knew I wanted to start a fitness journey. But in my early recovery, I knew that I needed to focus on these other things first. Okay. And, you know, I think that it's important for everybody out there listening, right? We have to find a keystone health habit, something that we can start doing like today. If you don't already have your health journey down, your fitness journey down, something that we can start doing today that can set us up for, you know, a better life in the future with our health. What are some things that you would recommend to people, maybe in early recovery, that they can start implementing to work on their fitness? Not everybody's going to be a dang bodybuilder. You know, I'm not even a dang bodybuilder, but what are some things that they can start implementing now?
What I would say, well, personally, what I did was I would do 3, 4, 5 times a day, whatever. I wake up in the middle of the night and crave, and I go to the gym for 3 hours. Like, I just went as crazy and hard as I could. Not necessarily healthy to do that, right? And that was just me. That's how I stayed sober. Yeah. What I'd say for somebody to start, you know, doing now is disciplining yourself enough to wake up before you are comfortable waking up. And because I think the bed is symbolic of our comfort zone. Yeah. Right. And I think that, right, it's symbolic of the comfort zone. And if you can wake up without a snooze button and put your feet on the floor and separate yourself from this symbol of comfort, then it puts you in a mindset to where you're able to choose purpose over pleasure throughout the day. Yes. Purpose over comfort. Right. Yes. And I mean, that's what this tattoo is here, like purpose and pleasure. It's a huge part of my life. If you choose pleasure, you're going to choose it all day. Yeah. If you choose to snooze, you're going to snooze all day. So just that, and like you said, making your bed, say, I'm done with the comfort today. I'm done. It's time to start the day. With the other thing that I do after I get out of bed, like 5 a.m. now, it used to be 2:50. As I go straight downstairs and I get my ass on the stair stepper and I do 30 minutes as hard as I can with the hoodie on. So, and then at the end, I'll take it off. But I just suffer. It feels so, I hate it. Right. I don't want to get on there every day, but what it does to my mind is it's the endorphins. It's the act of choosing to suffer rather than sleep. It puts you in a mindset where you're willing to continue being disciplined that day. It's going to be a lot easier for you to stay off the drugs and alcohol if you choose to split yourself from the comfort zone and suffer instead.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot in there. I don't know if I'm going to be going downstairs and getting on a treadmill with a hoodie on for 30 minutes, but I do the same thing. I have my morning routine. I talk specifically about, when you wake up, hitting your feet directly to the floor and then splash something cold on yourself. Like, get yourself up, turn the lights on. It triggers your mind to be up, be awake, go at it. And there's something about, waking up to an alarm and writing down the night before, like what time I'm waking up. And then that alarm goes off, you get up, you're like, all right, I do what I say I'm going to do, period, right away. And this is coming from two people that, we focus on personal development. We focus on growth. And you out there listening, it's been on at least half of my podcasts, half of my video podcasts, that I talk about the importance of the morning, the importance of taking control of your morning, creating these keystone habits, doing these things that you've always wanted to do. He wanted to be Eric wanted to be a nutrition and bodybuilder, nutrition specialist and bodybuilder. So in order to do that vision, he had to do these habits and force himself to do these habits. Now, he's suffering in the morning. And the beautiful thing about suffering is we all suffer. It doesn't matter if you choose to do it or not. It's like everything is hard. It's hard to be out there looking for dope, looking for money for dope, doing whatever it takes to get dope and then withdrawing. It's a hard life. It's hard to get up at 5 a.m., go downstairs with a hoodie on and get on a stepper for 30 minutes. Choose your hard. What life do you want? Each one of these is a life that we create. One of them is we allow ourselves to be unconscious. And the other one, we're allowing ourselves to become the greatest self, to become that person that God always called us to be. And I'm going to end with one more thing. I have this affirmation because you spoke on it a little earlier, and it's your tattoo, right? I have this affirmation I say every day. I'm like, I'm on a mission from God, and I always prioritize his call over my pleasures. And by saying that, I will, remind myself that when something comes up and it's taken me away from that purpose, if it's something that's going to be pulling me in this direction that I know I shouldn't be going, even if it's those little small things, right? I choose to do this instead of doing the podcast. I choose to do this instead of reaching out to people to do the podcast. Those small decisions during the day, if we have the mindset that we're picking purpose over the instant pleasures, we're setting ourselves up. We're setting ourselves up to be 240 instead of 135, right?
For real, bro.
Let's go.
That's right.
Let's go.
That's right.
So before this show, you told me that you've helped over 275 people in the last 2 years with your coaching, with your programs and things like that. So tell me about some of those people and what it's been like working with them.
Man, well, I started off just doing fitness and nutrition, and I realized very quickly that I am not just a fan of giving someone a plan and walking away. Yeah. And so I've accelerated my program to a point where I'm working very one-on-one with every client, where we're actually meeting every other week for an hour, sometimes once a week. And we're doing a lot of life and mindset coaching, right? Mm-hmm. My whole goal is, like I said before, I had this vision of who I wanted to be. And then I aligned my habits with that vision. And I did those habits until I became that person. That's what this program is. So it's not just about fitness and nutrition, very small part of it. What it's about is figuring out, like, who does Adam want to become, right? Mm. Like, what is the general vision of Adam? And in his character, in his core, his beliefs, his values, who does he want to be? Good father, loyal, honest, sober, whatever it is. What we do is we reverse engineer that into daily habits.
Yeah.
And those habits are repeated every single day. And then in those meetings that we do, we work on the belief system, right? Because if you don't believe it, it's going to be hard to stay consistent.
100%.
And so we're finding root issues, we're finding blind spots, mental limitations that hold you back, and we're diving into the darkness together. It's like therapy, right?
Yeah.
And we're pulling those out together. Now, this is a highly intensive program, and it's very effective.
I bet it is.
Yeah, it's super effective. Obviously, it's what I took. I was one of the worst, bro. And so if it could help me, I think it could help anyone. Now, I normally work with entrepreneurs and very highly motivated people.
Mm-hmm.
But I have worked with people that are struggling with drugs. Now, the thing is that can you show up every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the kind of coach that wants to work with someone that's going to quit or give up, because I don't quit or give up. Yeah. And so I want to take people on and help them, but they got to be committed. They got to be willing to do the work, and it's going to hurt. Yeah. And if that's what you feel you need, hit me up.
And where would they find you? Where can they find you?
Instagram's probably the best place to reach me. I'm always responding to my DMs. So _Eric Rogers on Instagram. And then also, just the link in my bio there. You can sign an application and stuff like that, but you can DM me. It's the best way to do it. But honestly, I am not here to make clients. That's not why I'm here. My biggest reason to be here, like I said earlier, is to share my story and to help other people maybe get in a place where they can share theirs. I would like to meet the people that I reached today. I would like to hear your story. I'd like to be a part of your support group. I'd like to, be a friend of yours. So, don't think this is about money. It's not. I want to help however I can. So feel free to reach out to me.
Amen. Amen. I love it, brother. Thank you so much for coming on. Guys, reach out to him on Instagram. He wants to hear your story. And guys, I know that there's a lot of you out there that want to share your story. And maybe you guys will click. Maybe you guys have something in common, and maybe you guys can work together. Guys, we love you so much. Eric, thank you so much for coming on, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, brother.
Awesome. Guys, we love you. Thanks for coming in. Keep living. Recovered on Purpose.